and still my patient.
So they were indeed infected?
Yes, oh yes, they were infected.
Okay.
Compton says that they got infected from him.
Yo, let's keep it real. Eazy-E's death has always been one of hip-hop's wildest mysteries. But now, years later, the last doctor to see him alive is finally speaking out. And what he reveals suggests Eazy's death wasn't straightforward at all. Someone may have played a role. Let me break it down. The real talk from the doc. Yo, after damn near 3 decades of wild theories, street gossip, and mad speculation about what really went down with one of the realest OGs in the game, the truth has finally surfaced from where you'd least expect it. Straight from a doctor who was deep in the trenches treating cats during the height of the AIDS epidemic. The street's been buzzing with conspiracy theories since day one about how Eric Eazy-E Wright got. Heads been pointing fingers, spinning wild tales about injections and setups. But when Dr. Wilbert Jordan stepped up to the mic in 2021 for that wet EV joint, The Mysterious Death of Eazy-E, he came with receipts. The first bombshell he dropped: after Eazy-E contracted the disease, 2 women in his life ended up infected, and both of them became his patients.
But also, during that time, we know that he had a number of other women in his life. So I just want to talk about them for a second.
I have 2 of my patients.
2 of the women were your patients? Just want to make sure I heard that correctly.
Yes.
Yes.
Damn, when the doctor said that, you could feel the weight of what he was laying down. This wasn't no speculation or street rumors. This was a medical professional confirming that he personally treated 2 females who caught HIV from Eazy-E himself. That right there shut down every conspiracy theorist who tried to claim the homie was clean before he got to the hospital. The proof was sitting right there in his medical practice.
One is still my patient.
So they were indeed infected?
Yes, oh yes, they were infected.
Okay.
Compton says that they got infected from him.
But are still living. You were able to save their life.
The emotional impact of this revelation hit different because we're talking about real sisters whose lives got changed forever because of their connection to one of hip-hop's biggest stars. The fact that one of these women was still under this doctor's care decades later shows both the ongoing impact of those infections and how much medical game had improved since Eazy got taken out. But Dr. Jordan wasn't done schooling everybody about how this virus really moves in the street. He broke down some real scientific knowledge about how HIV transmission worked as the disease progresses, giving insights that helped explain the tragic scope of Eazy's unknowing impact on the community.
So if I'm following your logic, what I'm hearing you say is that as his immune system diminished, the likelihood of him transmitting it to someone increases. The woman that he married was pregnant, had a child. They also had a child. She tested and she was negative.
This medical breakdown was crucial for understanding why some of Eazy's women caught it while others didn't. As HIV progresses and starts breaking down your immune system, your viral load typically gets higher, making you more likely to pass it on to your partners. This meant that females who got with Eazy during different stages of his infection faced different levels of risk, depending on where his disease was at. The fact that Eazy-E's wife, Tamika Woods Wright, who was carrying his baby at the time of his death, tested negative for HIV had been fuel for conspiracy theorists for years. They kept pointing to her negative status as proof that something fishy was going on. But Dr. Jordan's medical expertise provided the real explanation for what seemed like a contradiction to people who didn't understand how this virus really operated.
Yeah, that's possible. And if she's negative, the baby's going to be negative.
Okay.
She's lucky because she was exposed enough that she could have.
Okay.
The doctor kept it 100 about how HIV transmission really worked. It's not guaranteed every single time, even with unprotected relations. Whether someone catches it depends on a whole bunch of factors like viral load, timing, other infections, and individual immune responses. He pointed to cases like Magic Johnson as examples of how transmission patterns can be inconsistent, showing that Tamika's negative status didn't prove anything suspicious was going on. But the most important knowledge Dr. Jordan was dropping concerned how HIV progression worked back in the day before modern treatment options. He confirmed that Eazy-E had likely been carrying the virus for over 5 years, based on how far the disease had progressed to full-blown AIDS. This timeline was crucial for understanding how someone could be walking around looking healthy and then get knocked down so fast once AIDS-related complications kicked in. HIV can stay quiet in your system during what doctors call the clinical latency stage, which can last for years without showing any symptoms. During this time, the virus is quietly destroying your immune system while you feel completely normal and have no clue you're carrying this deadly package. It's only when your immune system gets weak enough that opportunistic infections start taking over. And by that point, the switch from HIV to AIDS can happen lightning fast. In Eazy-E's case, what took him out was pneumocystis carinii pneumonia, PCP, which is common in AIDS patients whose immune systems are completely shot. Dr. Jordan also schooled everybody about the state of HIV/AIDS treatment back in '95. At that time, the medical game was still weak when it came to fighting HIV, with limited options compared to what's available today. The medications they had were harsh and often made people sicker, and the combination therapy that would later save millions of lives was just starting to be developed. The timing of Eazy-E's death was particularly cruel because it happened right as medical science was about to make breakthrough discoveries. The FDA approved the first really effective HIV medication, nevirapine, in 1996, just 1 year after Eazy died, and the combination therapies that turned HIV from a death sentence into a manageable condition became available shortly after. If he had been diagnosed earlier or held on just a little longer, his whole outcome might have been different. The doctor's revelations also shed light on how HIV was devastating the Black community during the 90s. He noted that in 1995, African Americans made up 41% of AIDS cases, despite being only 14% of the US population, showing how this disease was hitting communities of color especially hard. This disparity wasn't random. It was due to a combination of factors including limited access to healthcare, lack of education about HIV prevention and testing, stigma around the disease, and socioeconomic conditions that made marginalized communities more vulnerable. Eazy-E's case reflected these broader patterns rather than being some unique or suspicious situation. By focusing on the medical evidence, positive blood tests, clinical symptoms, and Eazy-E's physical deterioration, Dr. Jordan was trying to shift attention to the real issues around AIDS, particularly how it was impacting the Black community due to stigma and lack of education. Dr. Jordan's decision to speak publicly about these cases wasn't just about correcting the medical record. It was about honoring the memory of a brother who used his final days trying to educate his people about the realities of HIV/AIDS. Eazy-E's public statement, released on March 16, 1995, urged his fans to educate themselves about HIV/AIDS and acknowledged his role in spreading awareness about the disease. The doctor's real talk didn't just set the record straight about what happened to the godfather of gangster rap. It provided a blueprint for understanding how diseases like HIV move through communities, how they progress when left untreated, and why education and early detection are so crucial for protecting the people we care about when the street's strongest started breaking down. While Dr. Jordan's medical real talk gave us the scientific foundation for what went down with Eazy-E, the street-level story of his final week tells an equally important tale about a soldier whose body was betraying him in ways he couldn't understand. The warning signs had been building for months, but those closest to the Compton legend were about to witness a collapse that would shake the entire hip-hop nation to its core. The story of Eazy-E's last days doesn't start in some sterile hospital room. It begins in the recording studios, where he had spent countless hours grinding and creating the music that put West Coast rap on the map. It was in these familiar surroundings, doing what he did best, that the first really alarming signs of his condition became impossible to ignore, even for his closest homies. BG Knockout, one of Eazy-E's tightest collaborators and a witness to those final moments in the studio, later revealed the chilling details of what went down. What he described wasn't just someone feeling a little under the weather. This was a full-blown medical emergency unfolding right there in the booth.
When his lungs actually collapsed in the studio, wasn't nobody there but me, Donovan, and my cousin, because we was working on our album. He was in the back of the studio, in that little hallway. And I went out there like 2 or 3 times. I'm like, E, can you please come on and do your little part so we can turn this album in? He was like, hold on, hold on.
The progression from what seemed like a minor delay to a life-threatening emergency happened with terrifying speed. BG Knockout's account shows how quickly Eazy-E's condition went from what looked like minor discomfort to a straight-up medical crisis that had everybody shook.
The last time I went out, he was wheezing real heavily. And he started hitting the inhalers. And as we were talking, he started sweating, and his condition just progressively got worse. He can barely speak.
Picture this scene. The realest OG in the game, desperately hitting inhalers while his vision starts going blurry, sweating bullets while his breathing gets more and more labored. This wasn't just someone having an asthma attack. This was someone whose body was shutting down in real time. The timing of this collapse was crucial. It happened on the exact same day that Eazy-E got rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, starting a month-long battle that would end with his death. But the warning signs had been stacking up for weeks before that dramatic studio collapse. Those who rolled with Eazy-E regularly had started noticing changes in his health, especially a persistent cough that seemed different from anything they had observed before. One particularly revealing account comes from someone who knew Eazy-E's habits intimately, someone who could tell the difference between normal effects of his lifestyle and something far more serious. The evolution of his cough became a crucial piece of evidence that something was seriously wrong with the homie.
I get a call from E, and E's telling me, meet me at the house on Sunday. So Sunday, me and my homies, we all go to his house. And man, he's got a dry cough, like a cold, dry cough. And he was like, man, I got this bronchitis, just let me get it out of my chest. And
Some of the people that I'm talking to were saying that they weren't surprised, or at least weren't alarmed by the cough, because he smoked so much weed.
Initially, Eazy's crew wasn't particularly worried about his cough. Given his well-known love for the herb, respiratory symptoms seemed like part of the territory. But this witness had enough experience in the streets to recognize that what he was hearing was something entirely different from the usual effects of chronic smoking.
cough was different that Sunday when we went to his house.
How so?
Because, man, I've smoked weed since 16, 17 years old. It wasn't a weed cough.
Okay.
It was a...
So you knew the difference.
Yeah,
You knew it wasn't a
of
weed
course.
cough.
Yeah, it was not a weed cough.
This distinction was crucial because it showed that people close to Eazy-E were starting to realize that his symptoms weren't related to his recreational habits, but to something much more sinister. The timeline that followed this observation was frighteningly compressed.
That Sunday, how soon before he ended up in the hospital?
That Monday,
Wow.
the next day, and he never came out of the hospital out of Cedars-Sinai.
Wow.
The visit where the alarming cough was observed happened on a Sunday, and by Monday, the very next day, Eazy-E was admitted to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. What makes this timeline even more tragic is the cold reality that followed. The homie never walked out of that hospital alive. When Eazy-E got rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles on February 24, 1995, he was checked in under the alias Eric Lawless to keep his business private, which was standard procedure for high-profile patients. He and his people initially thought his symptoms were related to asthma or bronchitis, conditions he had dealt with since he was young. The initial misdiagnosis made sense. Eazy-E's childhood asthma history led everyone to assume that his symptoms were connected to a respiratory condition he had been managing for years. But as the medical team at Cedars-Sinai started running comprehensive tests, a much more serious picture began to emerge. On March 1st, 1995, the test results came back showing that Eazy-E was HIV positive, and his condition had already progressed to full-blown AIDS. This diagnosis came completely out of left field. There was no evidence that Eazy-E had any clue about his HIV status before he got to the hospital. The progression from HIV to AIDS typically takes years, sometimes even a decade or more, which meant that Dr. Jordan's assessment was on point. Eazy-E had likely been carrying the virus for an extended period without knowing it. This was unfortunately common in the early 90s, when routine HIV testing wasn't standard practice, and the stigma around the disease kept many people from seeking testing. The fact that his diagnosis blindsided both Eazy-E and his inner circle reflects the broader lack of HIV/AIDS awareness and testing in communities like Compton during that era. The disease was often misunderstood, and many people, especially in marginalized communities, didn't have access to proper healthcare or education about HIV prevention and testing. Once the diagnosis was confirmed, the medical team at Cedars-Sinai found themselves treating a patient whose immune system had been so severely compromised that his body could no longer fight off the opportunistic infections that characterize AIDS. The rapid deterioration from apparent health to life-threatening illness was typical for untreated HIV in the pre-heart era, as the virus could remain hidden until the immune system was critically damaged. By mid-March 1995, Eazy-E was in the ICU, heavily sedated and dependent on a respirator because his immune system was too weak to fight the infection that was destroying his lungs. Medical records and accounts from his people indicate he had lost approximately 35 pounds in the months leading up to his death, which was a sign of advanced AIDS-related wasting syndrome. The hospital got flooded with calls and visits, including from former NWA members like Dr. Dre and Ice Cube, who had squashed their beef with Eazy-E before his death. The public response was overwhelming when Eazy-E's condition was announced. Cedars-Sinai reported receiving over 2,500 calls daily from concerned fans, which was more than they got during Lucille Ball's hospitalization in 1989. This outpouring highlighted both Eazy-E's massive cultural impact and the public's lack of understanding about HIV/AIDS, especially in the African American and hip-hop communities. But the hospital also had to deal with problems from unverified visitors, including women claiming to be former lovers, some of whom were making death threats. These incidents reflected both the chaos surrounding his hospitalization and the complex personal relationships that had characterized his life, despite brief reports from friends like Big Reg suggesting some improvement around March 24th. Eazy-E's immune system was too compromised to recover, and he succumbed to AIDS-related complications on March 26, 1995. The tragedy of those final weeks was that they happened at the worst possible time, just before medical science would develop the tools that could have saved his life. If Eazy-E had been diagnosed even a year or two later, when combination therapy became available, his story might have had a completely different ending. Instead, he became one of the last major casualties of the pre-treatment era, dying just as hope was beginning to emerge for people with HIV/AIDS, separating the real from the fake. Now that Dr. Jordan dropped that medical knowledge and I broke down the timeline of Eazy-E's final days, it's time to address the elephant in the room. How did so many wild conspiracy theories gain traction in the streets? And what do the actual medical facts tell us about the claims that have been circulating for nearly 3 decades? The conspiracy theories surrounding Eazy-E's death didn't just materialize out of thin air. They emerged from a combination of shocking circumstances, cultural context, and a fundamental lack of understanding about how HIV/AIDS actually operates in the body. But as medical experts began to address these theories head-on, the contrast between street speculation and scientific evidence became impossible to ignore. One of the most persistent and elaborate conspiracy theories suggested that Eazy-E had been deliberately infected with HIV through contaminated needles, possibly during acupuncture treatments or through some other form of injection. This theory gained particular traction when it was explored in The Mysterious Death of Eazy-E docuseries, where medical experts were asked to break down the actual feasibility of such a scenario. The medical response to these theories was both educational and eye-opening. When experts were asked about the possibility of transmission through contaminated acupuncture needles, their answers provided crucial context about both the technical challenges and the actual probabilities involved in such scenarios. Transmission through such means wasn't technically impossible. The practical challenges and extremely low probability made it highly unlikely as an explanation for Eazy-E's infection. Medical expert Justin Goforth, featured in the docuseries, noted that the probability of contracting HIV from a needle stick is approximately 0.3%, which is a fraction of the risk associated with sexual transmission or other common routes of infection. More importantly, the injection theories completely failed to account for the timeline that Dr. Jordan had established. His revelation that he had treated 2 women who caught HIV from Eazy-E proved that the rapper had been HIV positive and infectious for years before his diagnosis. This medical evidence directly contradicted theories suggesting he was deliberately infected shortly before his hospitalization. When prominent figures from the hip-hop community were asked to address these conspiracy theories directly, their responses often revealed the practical flaws in the injection scenarios that medical experts had identified.
How would he do that?
Through an intravenous needle.
And Eazy would never tell anybody that.
No, maybe Eazy didn't even know.
Nah, I think if somebody poke you with one of them goddamn needles, you know. You know.
This practical objection highlighted one of the fundamental problems with the injection theories. Eazy-E was known for his fearless personality and his willingness to speak out about conflicts and threats. The idea that he would stay quiet about being attacked with a contaminated needle seemed completely inconsistent with everything known about his character and how he moved in the streets. The persistence of conspiracy theories, despite the medical evidence, revealed deeper issues about trust, understanding, and the cultural context in which Eazy-E's death occurred. The early 1990s were marked by a general lack of HIV/AIDS education, particularly in communities like Compton, where Eazy-E was from. This lack of understanding created fertile ground for alternative explanations when a prominent figure died so quickly after diagnosis. The distrust was amplified by historical medical abuses like the Tuskegee experiment, which had created deep suspicion of medical institutions within the African American community. When faced with a shocking diagnosis and rapid death, it was perhaps natural for people in the hood to look for explanations beyond natural disease progression. The conspiracy theories were also fueled by the broader context of violence and conflict that surrounded the rap industry during the 90s. The intense beef between record labels, particularly involving figures like Suge Knight, and the general atmosphere of paranoia that characterized the industry, made conspiracy theories seem more believable to many observers. However, when examined against the medical evidence that Dr. Jordan and other experts provided, these theories consistently fell apart under scrutiny. The medical consensus, supported by epidemiological data and clinical experience, pointed to sexual transmission as the most likely explanation for Eazy-E's HIV infection. Eazy-E's own admissions about his lifestyle provided clear evidence of high-risk behavior that aligned with the most common modes of HIV transmission. In his public statement released on March 16, 1995, he kept it real about having multiple sexual partners and admitted that maybe success was too good to me. The medical explanation for what had seemed mysterious to many observers was actually straightforward when viewed through the lens of HIV/AIDS progression in the 1990s. Dr. Jordan's confirmation that Eazy-E's rapid decline was consistent with the natural progression of untreated HIV helped explain what had appeared suspicious to conspiracy theorists. The conspiracy theories also failed to account for the broader epidemiological context of HIV/AIDS during that era. In 1995, HIV/AIDS was the leading cause of death for Americans aged 25-44, with over 50,000 deaths annually in the United States. Eazy-E's death, while shocking to his fans in the streets, was unfortunately part of a much larger public health crisis that was claiming thousands of lives. The disproportionate impact of HIV/AIDS on the African American community was well documented, with infection rates significantly higher than in other populations due to systemic factors like poverty, limited healthcare access, and stigma. Understanding these broader patterns helped place Eazy-E's case in proper context rather than viewing it as some isolated or suspicious event. Perhaps most importantly, the focus on conspiracy theories often overshadowed the positive impact that Eazy-E's public disclosure had on HIV/AIDS awareness in the community. His decision to announce his diagnosis publicly was groundbreaking at a time when stigma surrounding the disease was rampant. His final statement urged his people to educate themselves about HIV/AIDS and to make better choices about their health. The overwhelming response from the streets to Eazy-E's announcement demonstrated the significant impact his disclosure had on public awareness. This response helped spark important conversations about HIV/AIDS prevention and testing that undoubtedly saved lives and continues to influence public health efforts in the hood today. Events like the 1995 Urban Aid 4 Lifebeat concert, which raised HIV awareness in the hip-hop community through performances and education, were direct results of the increased attention that Eazy-E's death brought to the issue. His family members, including his son Lil Eazy-E, and organizations like the Black AIDS Institute, have continued this legacy, advocating for testing and treatment in the community. The medical insights provided by Dr. Jordan and other experts served not only to correct the historical record, but also to honor Eazy-E's final wish to educate his people about HIV/AIDS. By providing clear, evidence-based explanations for what had happened, medical professionals helped shift the conversation away from unfounded speculation and toward the important work of prevention and education. In the end, the doctor's revelations proved that sometimes the truth is both simpler and more profound than any conspiracy theory. Eazy-E's death wasn't the result of some complex plot. It was the result of a young black man living his life without understanding the risks he faced in a time when the medical community was still learning how to fight this disease. That truth, as painful as it might be to accept, contains the power to save lives. And that's the most fitting tribute to the godfather of gangsta rap. Not wild theories about how he died, but real knowledge about how others can live. Dr. Jordan's medical revelations finally gave Eazy-E's story the ending it deserved. Not as a cautionary tale about industry conspiracies, but as a call to action for health awareness, education, and prevention in the community he loved so much. If you enjoyed watching this video, then go ahead and click on any of the cards on your screen for more.